Necrophages, scavengers, creatures that lurk in the night. They hide in graveyards, burial mounds and crypts. They tear open graves in search of what was once human, and they feed on it. Holiness is a notion that means nothing to them. They despise it. Death is literally a blessing that lets them exist, yet they do more than feast on its fruits. They can bring death themselves, lying in wait for unwary travelers by the roadside or beside the graves of their kin. In an instant, their claws sink into a new victim. When the body bleeds dry, the necrophage returns, drags it to its lair, and waits for the flesh to rot, then gnaws every bone. Today we speak of these vile beings, the most ancient necrophages from our ancestors' legends, the ghouls. We shall tell you guys how they entered history, how they prowled into the modern world, and then of their elderkin, the Alghoul, the Graveir, and the Cemetaur. We will discuss who they are, what they look like, how they behave, and how to fight them. But first, we'd like to thank the patrons who support this channel. Thank you guys. Your help drives us onward. Well, let us begin. Ghoul mythology. A creature like the ghoul was first mentioned in Arab, Persian, and Turkish legends of the pre-Islamic era. Strikingly, its image was almost identical among different peoples. The monster appeared as a dangerous shapeshifter that committed every imaginable evil. The ghoul ambushed travelers, devoured them, often while still alive, kidnapped children, drank infants' blood, robbed the righteous, dug up graves, and ate corpses. In short, it embodied nearly every repulsive horror people of the time could conceive. The ghoul was described as hideously ugly, sagging, rough skin studded with boils, hairless, donkey hooves for feet, long claws and teeth that tore flesh with ease. It dwelt in wells, swamps, cemeteries, and recent battlefields, anywhere food lay. This image grew strong and popular across Central Asia and remained unchanged for centuries. Only the arrival of Islam altered it slightly. Now the ghoul became half shapeshifter, half demon. In 1001 Nights, the ghoul appears as a cunning were-beast that assumes human form, most often a lovely woman, to lure lonely travelers into its lair before devouring them. There were few ways to defeat a ghoul. Strike it once with a weapon, for a second blow would revive it, and the cycle could repeat endlessly. Or pray to Allah, whereupon the ghoul would lose its glamour and reveal its true shape. According to Abu Murrah, the ghoul was an unsettled spirit, a demon risen from the underworld who had to feed on human flesh to endure. Notably, it devoured the victim's entrails first and only then the flesh, or left that to scavengers. The surest way to identify it among mortals was the strong stench of death that clung to it. Yet it made its lairs where people seldom went: deserts, graveyards, swamps, ruined settlements, cemeteries, and old battlefields. In time, ghouls were classed among the jinn, offspring of shaitan. Though weaker than ifrits or merits, they could still wreak great harm. The image traveled through the ages and across the world. In Europe, the emphasis fell on their role as scavengers haunting burial grounds. Slavic peoples called them upir, rising from the dead. In Tungus Manchurian myth, the monster was named Buzi, thus born of mankind's dread of death and the hereafter. The ghoul survives to this day and is now one of the world's most recognizable monsters, thanks to writers and notably game developers who favor the creature in countless titles. Pan Sapkowski too mentions ghouls in his Witcher saga, and CD Projekt Red refined the concept further. Anyone who has played even a little of Geralt of Rivia's adventures knows exactly what a ghoul is. Ghoul the Witcher. The Bestiary entry goes as follows. Ghouls are said to have been humans who were once forced into cannibalism, and after many years spent in dark crypts underwent a horrifying transformation. Only human flesh can satisfy their eternal evil hunger, so they killed people and stored their remains in the recesses of their lairs. Ghouls and Graveirs are hard to describe. In part, they resemble humans, yet on the whole, they are the utter negation of all that is human. Though they have arms and legs like men, they walk on all fours like dogs or badgers. Though they have eerily familiar faces, one searches them in vain for any sign of sentiment, reason, or even a spark of consciousness. They are driven by one thing and one thing only, an insatiable craving for human flesh. These necrophages are plentiful on the continent, for endless wars, plagues, and magical cataclysms supply them with food. Ghouls rarely attack living beings on their own, but in packs they grow bold enough to menace small villages. Still, their usual haunts are cemeteries, grave mounds, and battlefields. Attacking the living is risky. Corpses do not flee. Guaranteed food matters more than anything. Therefore, common folk should avoid such places. The chance of stumbling into a pack is too great. Travelers have comparatively little to fear. Ghouls strike the living only as a last resort, when starving, and even then they are far from the worst danger on the road. The creatures may also lurk underground, digging ambush pits for prey. Should a traveler meet a pack, hesitation is fatal. Run at once and avoid encirclement. Witchers are hired to exterminate ghouls. For them it is routine work. The beasts are predictable, abundant, and vulnerable to fire and frost, retreating quickly when too few remain to press an attack. Only large packs pose real peril, and witches try to avoid such encounters. Even so, Geralt of Rivia once suffered one of his gravest wounds in combat with ghouls. Protecting a merchant named Yorga from a full pack, he could not cut down so many nimble foes outright. One ghoul bit him, and the venom in its fangs nearly cost the witcher his life. Only powerful elixirs, Yorga's devoted care, and the unexpected aid of Geralt's mother, the sorceress Vicenna, saved him. It was a lesson the White Wolf never forgot. Overall, however, ghouls are far from the continent's deadliest monsters. Alghoul, the Witcher. Far more formidable than a ghoul is its stronger, sharper relative, the Alghoul. The Bestiary entry goes as follows. Alghouls are ghouls which had been devouring corpses for so many years that human flesh becomes irresistible and they begin to prey on the living. They are seen in crypts and on battlefields, frequently surrounded by ghouls. Simple folk do not notice the differences between these two types of scavengers, unlike witchers who know that the Alghoul is a more aggressive and challenging opponent. Alghouls differ from normal ghouls in size, strength, coloring, and most importantly, intelligence. Whereas ghouls and Graveirs are primitive creatures unfit to plan even the simplest ambush, Alghouls and their kindred, such as Cemetaurs, are capable of forethought and are thus much more dangerous. Axii forces the spines on an Alghoul to retract after a few seconds, with the added benefit of temporarily stunning the creature. It is very important to distinguish between ghouls and Alghouls because while the former have the usual set of abilities, speed, agility, strength, sharp claws and teeth, the latter possesses another rather dangerous weapon, spines. In battle, an Alghoul can bristle like a hedgehog, and if some poor soul is unlucky enough to crash into those spines, death is assured. That is why one must learn to tell ghouls from Alghouls. If a traveler encounters a lone ghoul, they have every chance of frightening the monster away or even killing it. However, if the traveler meets the ghoul's older brother, they should run for their life. It is almost impossible to injure an Alghoul covered in spines, and wounds from those razor blades are often fatal, turning the victim into the creature's next meal. Monster hunters, witchers, deal with both ghouls and Alghouls. The former are dangerous only in large packs, whereas the latter are risky opponents even when alone. Over the years, the witchers have learned how to handle Alghouls. They cast Axii to fool the beast, calm its instincts, and force it to retract its spines. After that, finishing the monster is easier. The famous Geralt of Rivia has slain many Alghouls, but the fight against an incredibly old necrophage, whom the people of Vizima's suburbs call the King of Corpse Eaters, proved particularly trying. Graveir, the Witcher. But the Alghoul is far from the most dangerous necrophage in the world of The Witcher. Even more perilous are creatures called Graveirs. They are bloodthirsty and extremely resilient necrophages that are much more human-like. They can walk on two legs, possess rudimentary intelligence, and are even capable of developing it. The entry in the Bestiary reads, after the war with Nilfgaard, Graveirs became a real plague. Until then, the monsters were familiar only to specialists and professional beast killers. Thus, everyone mistook them for ghouls. Today, any child could give an accurate description of a Graveir, and people who have passed near battlefields or necropolises offer first-hand accounts of the horrible murders committed by these ruthless necrophages. Graveirs are distinguished by the fact that they carry their victims back to their lairs, where they wait until the flesh has rotted a little. Decaying brains and fat, rotten meat, stinking lard, all this is on the Graveir's list of delicacies, which the monster will never refuse. The main danger that comes from the Graveir is its poison. Any wound allows a powerful toxin to enter the victim's body, capable of knocking down a horse. Only witches with a high tolerance for intoxication are capable of resisting it, and even then, only in small quantities. Intelligent Graveirs who have learned to think and to scheme can be especially dangerous. Geralt of Rivia discovered one such creature named Vitala in the cemetery of Vizima. The monster had settled in well, securing a plentiful food supply. Vitala fed on the corpses of those who had been killed and brought to the cemetery by Scoia'taels. The Witcher wanted to finish the monster, but the Graveir suddenly began to speak real human language. The creature had developed its mind so far that it could explain to Geralt that it killed no one, but only fed on corpses. The White Wolf can choose to believe and release it, or try to slay the Graveir, and the future fate of this unique talking necrophage depends on that choice. The Graveir is strong, intelligent, and dangerous, but among ghoul-like beings, one is still more terrifying. Cemetaur, the Witcher. The largest variant of the ghoul is the Cemetaur, a rather rare yet no less deadly creature for which there is no distinction between a corpse and a living being. The Cemetaur is powerful enough to feast on flesh in either case. The entry in the Bestiary reads as follows. Much has been written about ghouls and Graveirs, since they are encountered by common people in times of war or in cemeteries. Cemetaurs are female Graveirs, rare and stronger than its Graveir husbands, but when they appear in a necropolis, they take it over. All ghouls respect them and must bow to them. Cemetaurs are like the high ghouls of the necrophage world. They are the kings of graveyards. One theory holds that they are exceptionally ancient Graveirs, as the two monsters are rather similar in appearance. However, no one knows their true origin. Because they are both dangerous and very rare, no one has yet managed to study them properly. Cemetaurs are aggressive. They consider digging up graves beneath them, so they feed on slightly rotted corpses lying on the surface, or even on other scavengers. Ghouls and Alghouls form the Cemetaur's entourage, serving, obeying, and fearing it. A Cemetaur can reach 3 meters in height and is as strong as a Cyclops, while its venomous fangs make it even deadlier. It cannot be knocked down or stunned. It is immune to poisons and fears only fire and silver. Few people know of the very existence of Cemetaurs, except for witchers and a handful of scholars. The data on these monsters are extremely scarce, and parts of their bodies fetch extraordinary sums. A trophy such as a Cemetaur's head can earn a fortune. So in the end, the images of mythological and game ghouls, together with their relatives, so to say, are quite similar. But in the legends of our world, a ghoul is a dangerous corpse-eating shapeshifter whose main peril arises when it takes human form. Whereas in the game universe, the emphasis lies on corpse eating, turning the ghoul into an exceptionally dangerous scavenger. Well, that is all for today. Do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and hit the bell so you do not miss any of our content. Which beasts and monsters from the Witcher world would you like us to cover next? Be sure to let us know in the comments. Do support our work on Patreon with a channel subscription. Your interest helps us create more content. We would also like to thank our patrons for backing this video. Thank you guys. Without your support, the videos here would appear far less often. In any case, thank you guys for every view and see you soon when the old Witcher speaks once more.